Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. The cloud-splitting chariot stopped moving. If the elites of the three sects were to launch an attack on the evil sky pavilion within the barrier at this moment, the consequences would be unimaginable. The noble and fiend paths had never seen eye to eye. Although the three sects were different from the 10 great sects, they were one of the most powerful among the noble paths factions in Great Yen. They had 20 peaks and 10 holy lands. Their disciples numbered in tens of thousands. In terms of barriers, the barriers of the three sects' 10 holy lands were one of the best in the cultivation world. They could be used to attack and defend. Zhou looked at the Luo sect cultivators on Heaven's Virtue. For an instant, she had complicated feelings. Many cultivators hovered above Heaven's Virtue. Whiz. At this moment, a 90-foot avatar flew toward them from afar. It unleashed its grand technique and soon arrived above Heaven's Virtue from its original position at one of the peaks. Everyone turned to look at the newcomer. Nan Gongwei, the sect master of Tian Sect, welcomes the old senior. Several thousand Tian Sect disciples bowed in midair. Welcome, old senior. This scene was really extravagant. Anyone else would have been moved. During the Evil Sky Pavilion's previous visit, none of these sect masters had shown up. However, at this time, did they dare to not show up? Mingxian had the urge to beat himself to death. He was too excited about this. Kindness was always returned tenfold. Zhou pushed away from the flying chariot and flew out. The others leaped after him. There was no ostentatious show of power as the three sects disciples expected. However, they held their breaths. They did not dare to breathe heavily as they looked at the old man in front of them. Rise. Zhou's voice resounded across Heaven's Virtue. Everyone else sighed in relief. They descended. Although the Heaven's Virtue was vast, the center of the Holy Land was currently occupied by a lot of people. Nan Gongwei, the sect master of the Tian Sect, stood in the lead. At this moment, Fengyi, the sect master of the Luo Sect, descended as well. Nan Gongwei and Fengyi bowed in unison. What brings you here, senior? Nan Gongwei asked respectfully. Zhou's eyes shifted to Nan Gongwei. Where is the Yun Sect's Yunwuji? As expected. Nan Gongwei and Fengyi were clearly in a dilemma. The others exchanged glances and began discussing among themselves in a hushed tone. Nan Gongwei's expression was slightly sour as he said, Old senior, the Tian Sect was completely unaware of the Yun Sect's plan. I only found about the Yun Sect's participation in the siege after it happened. The Luo Sect had no knowledge of it as well. The Yun Sect is too unbecoming. We will certainly give the Evil Sky Pavilion a satisfactory explanation in regard to this. It was nothing new for the three sects to disagree among themselves. The current situation was also within expectations. From the moment the Yun Sect caused trouble, the signs of discord had already shown themselves. And how do you plan on doing that? Zhou asked Nan Gongwei and Fengyi in a deep voice. Well, Nan Gongwei and Fengyi were both sect masters. Both of them had remarkable statuses in the three sects. Their words certainly bore significance. Finally, the Luo sect's Fengyi bowed and said, just say the word, old senior. We'll give you the explanation that you want. Zhou was shocked to hear this. To think the three sects were pandering to the Evil Sky Pavilion. At this moment, a disciple flew toward them in great haste. He looked terrified and his face was drenched in sweat. When he descended, he tripped out of nervousness and fell face forward on the ground. When he picked himself up, he stuttered, Sect masters, this is bad. Nan Gongwei's expression darkened. He said, being flustered is unbecoming of a disciple. What is it? The disciple pointed toward the Holy Land where the Yuan sect was located and said, the sect master of Yuan sect master wants to. He's going to commit suicide. There was a collective gasp from the crowd. The disciples of the Tian and Luo sects looked toward Yuan sect. The people from the Evil Sky Pavilion were the only ones who remained unruffled. Lu Zhou's expression was indifferent as usual, as though none of this mattered to him. Zui Yushu, on the other hand, was even more shocked. The expression on her wizened face changed. After all, this meant the Yuan sect truly did attack the Evil Sky Pavilion. Did this mean the sect master of the Yuan sect was unable to withstand the pressure of the consequences of his actions? At this moment, an avatar appeared between the two peaks flanking the Yuan sect's holy land. The avatar had an impressive height of 90 feet. It glimmered with golden radiance and its palms were joined together. A figure could be seen hovering within the avatar. It was none other than Yuan Wuji, the sect master of the Yuan sect. A soundwave rolled toward heaven's virtue. Yuan Wuji has done wrong against the Patriarch. Yuan Wuji knows that he has committed a grave sin that can only be atoned by death. There were no attacks. Only Yuan Wuji's voice. His words were filled with reluctance and helplessness. Several thousand disciples of the three sects looked at the avatar. Their goal was to obtain an avatar like that. There were many cultivators who spent their whole lives cultivating without obtaining an avatar with the height of 90 feet. Yuan Wuji had reached where he was today due to his hard work. Everyone knew Yuan Wuji was a man who struck like lightning and moved like the wind. He was a rare cultivation genius in the cultivation world. He climbed all the way from the bottom of the rank to the highest peak in Yuan sect. He was the only one who knew how much effort he had poured in and how many trials he had to overcome before reaching the peak. Unfortunately, the final step had the difference between heaven and earth. Nan Gongwei and Fengiji, the sect masters of the Tian sect and the Luo sect respectively, looked at the avatar expressionlessly. Their hearts were as indifferent as their expressions. Nobody responded to Yuan Wuji. After a brief moment of silence, Yuan Wuji laughed forlornly. Was I truly wrong? Was I wrong? Soundwave rolled out again as he spoke. The 90-foot avatar moved swiftly and hovered 100 meters in front of everyone. Yuan Wuji was feeling the pressure from maintaining his avatar for such a long time since it consumed much of his power. However, this was no longer important. At this distance, he saw the Evil Sky Pavilion's master on Heaven's Virtue, the one and only legendary cultivator to reach the 9-leaf stage in Great Yan's cultivation world. Although he no longer cared about his life or death and was prepared to atone for his crime with his life, his heart still raced when he saw the pavilion master. Yuan Wuji looked at Lu Zhou, who was standing in the Holy Land. His hair was disheveled, and his voice broke as he said, clearly distressed, "Old Senior Ji, was I wrong?" The others found it difficult to tell if Yuan Wuji was going to laugh or cry. Before Lu Zhou could respond, Nan Gongwei said in a deep voice, "Yuan Wuji, you're being irrational." "I am not. I need answers. What have I done that is not for the Yuan sect's sake?" Nan Gongwei. Fengiji. "It is beneath me to be at the same rank as both of you." Yuan Wuji spat. At this moment, Ming Shi'in projected his voice said mockingly, "Not only are you wrong, but you've made a grave mistake." Yuan Wuji's gaze shifted from Lu Zhou onto Ming Shi'in. "For someone like you, you're not even worthy for my master to take action. How dare you go on and act so righteous? Hurry up and die." Ming Shi'in had seen his fair share of cultivators from the noble path, like Yuan Wuji. They always brag about how everything they had done was for the good of their sections. However, the truth was they would conduct shameful activities in the dark. Nevertheless, it did not stop them from singing their own praises and act righteous, trying to project a good image of themselves. Yuan Wuji felt his chest tighten. He had no choice. When Ming Shi'in saw Yuan Wuji's blank expression, he said, "What are you waiting for? The disciples of the three sects are waiting for you to kill yourself. Hurry up and die." Ming Shi'in seemed to be acting out of character. He was clearly more emotional compared to how he usually was. Aren't you doing this for the Yuan Sect? If you don't die, the entire Yuan Sect will have to die with you. Yuan Wuji's loss of his rational mind was merely his final struggle after he decided to die. In truth, since the day it was reported that the combined efforts of the 7 great sects and the 10 elders have failed, he knew his fate was sealed. The several thousand disciples from the 10 holy lands and the core elites surrounded the Yuan sect. The people of the Tian and Luo sects were not fools. Having offended a 9-leaf cultivator, they would never let the main culprit off lightly. Nan Gongwei and Fengiji had given the Yuan sect many troubles. The conflict between the 3 sects had reached its breaking point. Yuan Wuji was now a sinner of the 3 sects. Not only would he suffer a gruesome end, but he would also be cursed at for the next 1,000 years. How could he be willing to accept this? He hesitated as he looked at Mingshi, who was clearly provoking him. His 90-feet avatar wavered slightly. It was incredibly taxing to maintain the 100 Tribulations Insight avatar for a long time. He knew he had no choice. Otherwise, the Yuan sect would have to pay for it. In the end, he looked at Mingshi and said, "Very well. Die over there." Mingshi said irritably. None of the disciples of the 3 sects dared to interrupt. Nobody spoke on Yuan Wuji's behalf. An aggrieved expression appeared on Yuan Wuji's face as though he had been wronged. When saw the apathetic expressions on everyone's faces, he suddenly felt that, perhaps, he had made a huge mistake. The more he thought about it, the more aggravated he became. Why? Why must I share the benefits with everyone if I succeed? But now that I failed, I have to shoulder the blame on my own? The thoughts of men were often as fickle, it could change at a moment's notice. Yuan Wuji suddenly retreated further and further away. Kill myself for these people? No, it's not worth it. The disciples on Heaven's Virtue stared at Yuan Wuji while the Yuan sect disciples paid extra attention to him. Yuan Wuji continued to retreat until he was between several barriers. Whiz. Yuan Wuji's avatar shrunk. The barriers resonated loudly, creating ripples on the surfaces. In just a blink of an eye, Yuan Wuji shot out of the barriers. Mingshi widened his eyes. Hey, he ran away. The disciples of the 3 sects were dumbstruck. They looked at the fleeing Yuan Wuji, completely frozen like a wooden chicken. They had difficulty believing what they were seeing. Just a moment ago, Yuan Wuji was still questioning them in a forceful and righteous manner, but now, he was running away? The barriers buzzed. Yuan Wuji flew further and further away. He had been maintaining his avatar for a long time. With his grand technique, he passed through 3 barriers in just a blink of an eye. "Master, I'll chase after him, and..." Mingshi said before he stopped abruptly. He saw Lu Zhou was already knocking an energy arrow. Bam! The arrow was fired. Nobody noticed this since their attention was on Yuan Wuji. For a brief moment, they had completely forgotten about the greatest elite in the world. Zhou Yushu's attention was caught by the sound of the arrow being fired. When she turned around, she saw the arrow sailing through the air. The shot was neat and simple. Everyone widened their eyes when they finally saw the energy arrow passing through the barriers. Its speed exceeded their expectations. When Yuan Wuji was the size of a fist in their eyes, the energy arrow landed true. No sound could be heard. After a slight delay, they heard the loud bang. The sound wave spread out in the horizons. All they saw was Yuan Wuji suddenly coming to a halt in midair. The energy arrow had pierced his back. Yuan Wuji widened his eyes as he lowered his head to look at the energy arrow that pierced through his back to his chest. How? Impossible. A 9-leaf, godly archer? Yuan Wuji was a 7-leaf elite, after all. When he was fatally hit, he managed to maintain his altitude. However, this merely lasted for a short while. Shortly after, his primal qi leaked into the surroundings from his Dantian Sea of Qi. Yet, the energy arrow did not fade away, stubbornly lodged in his body. Eventually, he could no longer maintain his altitude and plunged to the ground into the forest below, vanishing from everyone's sight. Ding! Killed a target. Reward, 1,500 merit points. Silence descended on heaven's virtue. When Yuanwuji fell, the others were still in a daze. Their eyes were brimming with awe. This included Zhou. The Ji Tiandao she knew did not have such great mastery of the bow. How did he easily shoot a 7-leaf elite from this distance? Who else could have achieved this, if not a 9-leaf cultivator? The people of the Evil Sky Pavilion felt relieved. This was not their first time witnessing Zhou taking out a 7-leaf cultivator in a flash. At first, they were awed by his might. In hindsight, they felt there was nothing to be surprised about. After all, what was so surprising about a 9-leaf cultivator easily killing a 7-leaf cultivator? Zhou did not think much about this. When he recalled Unnamed, he gauged the heavenly writing's extraordinary power. He was left with half of the power. He had used much more power than necessary just to be safe. If it had been a shorter distance, with Unnamed, he would only need to use 1/3 of his extraordinary power to kill Yuanwuji. He would never allow Yuanwuji to escape from under his nose. Mingxirin made a spitting noise and broke the silence first. It would have been better if he had just killed himself. At least, he would be able to retain what little is left of his dignity. Little Yuan chimed in, "That's right, running away like that. He's more shameless than 4th senior brother." Zhou glanced at Mingxirin. His expression remained unchanged as he said apathetically, "If he wishes to die, I'll fulfill his wish." The Holy Land was quiet once again. Zhou looked at everyone and asked in a calm tone and a moderate volume, "Who else has anything to say?" However, his words were very domineering. After a moment's silence, Nan Gongwei, the sect master of the Tian sect master, bowed and said, "We have nothing to say about this. He deserves to die." "Yes, he deserves to die." Falniji chimed in. When the two of them bowed, they gulped and wiped the cold sweat off their faces. As the saying went, boil the hound once it caught the rabbit, hide the bow once the fowls were killed. Nobody sympathized with Yuanwuji, he did not deserve any sympathy, after all. At this moment, the stone door at the secluded cultivation spot in Heaven's Virtue slowly opened. Yuantianluo was brought out in a wheelchair. He seemed dispirited. His gaze was lifeless, and his aura was weak. "Patriarch." "Greetings, Patriarch." The disciples of the 3 sects bowed. Nan Gongwei and Fengyi looked over as well. The crowd parted. Yuantianluo seemed as though he was going to breathe his last breath at any given moment as he sat on the wooden chair. He struggled to look up. His gaze was despondent as he looked at Zhou. He managed a faint smile as he said, "I knew that you'd come." Zhou stepped forward with his hands on his back. The others backed away from the center of the Holy Land. Zhou stood before Yuantianluo. With a casual glance, he understood the situation immediately. He asked, "Your great limit is already here, and yet, you're still holding on?" He could sense that Yuantianluo was only left with his final breath. When he said this, Nan Gongwei, Fengyi, and the disciples of the 3 sects were in turmoil. Yuantianluo, however, did not seem to mind as he said, "You can tell, Brother Ji?" After a violent coughing fit, he continued to say, "I have some regrets. That's why. I don't want to leave yet." Zhou shook his head and said, "Stubborn." "Yes, I am." Yuantianluo nodded. "You could have lived for a decade more." "Who hurt you?" Zhou asked. As the saying went, a single pebble gave rise to 1,000 waves. This was the effect of Zhou's words. Nan Gongwei and Fengyi looked shocked. They fell to their knees and kowtowed in unison. "Patriarch, which bastard is so bold as to attack you? Why didn't you tell us? How dare he harm our Patriarch? I vow to tear him to shreds." Yuantianluo waved his hand and said, "There's no need." The two of them were puzzled. Yuantianluo said, Didn't Yuan'er get what he deserved? It was Yuan'er? That scoundrel deceived his master and denounced his predecessors. That's how low he had stooped. Men. Several elders nearby stepped forward. Your orders? Find Yuan'er's corpse. Let it lie under the hot sun for 3 days before tearing it to pieces, Nan Gongwei said. Understood. The elders rose into the air and flew toward the forests. The disciples who heard this shuddered. The Tian Sect's master was rather vicious once he steeled his heart. The Yuan Sect disciples pulled long faces. They were still feeling uneasy. With the death of their sect master, the conflicts between the 3 sects had completely escalated. What followed would certainly be vicious cycles of vengeance. At this moment, Yun Tianluo said tonelessly, those who have no business here should leave. Get lost. Nan Gongwei said at once. The disciples of the 3 sects instantly scattered. Only the core members of the 3 sects were left. Several hundred cultivators, who were mostly elders or greater, remained on the Holy Land. Zhou stroked his beard and said, Do you know why I'm here? Yun Tianluo said, Oh? Perhaps, my sentiments are reciprocated. I thought you're suddenly inspired by kindness, Brother Ji, and came to help me resolve my regret. That's not completely untrue. What are your regrets? Zhou asked. Although his attainment of the 9-leaf stage had practically nothing to do with Yun Tianluo, he could not think of an excuse. Moreover, he did not wish to explain himself. Yun Tianluo sighed deeply and said, I've studied the 9-leaf stage for many years and long to pass through those doors. Alas. I've known nothing but failure and am now in this state. I've brought this upon myself, I'm sure of that. Over the past century, there's only one thing that I've done right. With a deeper tone, he said, and that's entrusting the thing inside the chessboard to you, Brother Ji. Zhou's expression remained unchanged, but inwardly, he complained, that's too much, you old thing. Do you truly think that my attainment of the 9-leaf stage has anything to do with your stupid chessboard? All my life, the only thing I wanted is to have a peek into the 9-leaf stage. That's my greatest regret. Brother Ji, if you can help me resolve this regret, even in death, I'll remember your kindness. Otherwise, I won't be able to rest in peace. The words were truly burdensome. At this moment, Zhou spoke up. Yun Tianluo, you've grown sentimental since our last meeting years ago. Yun Tianluo was stunned. He turned to look at Zhou. Who are you? I'm Zhou. Upon hearing this, Yun Tianluo widened his eyes. An image of a peerless beauty with fair skin, charming curves, and a moving smile from 500 years ago surfaced in his mind. For a time, he had difficulties reconciling the image in his mind to the old woman in front of him. Miss Zhou. It's you? Ugh. Ming Shirin, who was standing at the side, made a vomiting gesture. However, nobody paid any attention to him. Zhou frowned slightly. You'd better change that form of address. I'm worried that I won't be able to sleep soundly at night. Yun Tianluo looked awkward. Zhou was once a popular candidate for marriage proposals. However, the Zhou back then had an unyielding temperament like a man. She pursued the Confucian path wholeheartedly and had no interests in romantic affairs at all. 500 years have passed. Blue seas had turned into mulberry fields. Her appearance aged. Time changed, but not the memories of the past. How do you want me to resolve your regret? Zhou asked. I'm not asking for much. All I want is to see what the 9-leaf stage is like, Yun Tianluo said. Upon hearing this, many of the people present had an eager and expectant expression on their faces. Zhou was the same. More than anyone else, she wanted to see a 9-leaf avatar. Ming Shirin, Lang Luo, Hua Wudao, and Little Yuan wanted to see the 9-leaf avatar again as well. Seeing it once was not enough for them. Zhou cursed inwardly, you're lucky I have the disguise cards right now. Otherwise, you won't be able to die in peace, you old thing. Outwardly, he said, very well. Lu Zhou raised a hand and activated his Dantian Sea of Qi. A disguise card appeared in his palm, then, he shattered it. A surge of unique power gathered inside his Dantian Sea of Qi, and his avatar appeared. Whiz. There was a strong resonance of power that resounded across heaven's virtue. The core disciples of the three sects widened their eyes. They looked at the 150-foot avatar. Because they were too close, they had to crane their necks to have a look. Even then, they could not see the top of the avatar. Soon after, they lowered their gazes to the huge golden lotus that was shining brilliantly. 9 lush leaves were slowly spinning around the golden lotus. Everyone felt their breaths caught in their throats. This was a 9-leaf golden lotus avatar. An actual 9-leaf golden lotus avatar? Their bodies trembled in excitement, and they were overwhelmed by emotions. This was the goal that many dreamt about. This was an avatar that many wanted to possess. Its radiance and every blade of leaf were ostentatious and dazzling. Also, how could it be so huge? Zhou staggered backward, completely in awe of the 9-leaf avatar.